One key to the whole process of getting vaccines is securing approval from Health Canada. To dig into that story, I'm joined now by Dr. Supriya Sharma. She is Chief Medical Advisor at Health Canada, and she joins me now from Ottawa. Thank you for coming on the show, Dr. Sharma.
Well, thank you for calling.
Well, we're happy to have the chance to chat with you. Obviously, the thing that everybody is talking about today is the date. Now, you said today that Health Canada is working, quote, flat out to review clinical trial data. There was some talk of January, some talk of December. Are you able to say what the earliest possible date Health Canada might be able to approve this vaccine is?
So what I can say is that we have 3 vaccines under review. So we have the AstraZeneca vaccine that came in on October 1st. We've got the Pfizer vaccine that came in on October 9th. And then we've got the Moderna vaccine that's come in on October 12th. And they're all at very different stages of the review based on the evidence that we have.
So, who's in the lead right now? We know there have been some problems with AstraZeneca. Who's at the front of the line? It's the recurring theme for today.
Yeah, so the review that we have the most data on is the Pfizer submissions. We have almost a complete package of data on that. And we are also working really closely with our other colleagues in the other regulatory authorities. And so it's looking like we're on track to be making a decision in line with the decisions that are going to be made in the United States and Europe. And that's looking sometime in December, at least for the first vaccine.
Part of what I'd like to understand is, the Americans are putting a specific date on this. We're talking about December 10th, December 11th. I understand that you're not going to be able to comment on what's going on in other jurisdictions. The UK is actually giving people appointments. But if the Americans can say we will have sufficient data to make a determination on this date, what prevents Canada from doing that?
Well, I think in the United States, they're really focused on the date of they're doing a committee. So that's what they use in the U.S. to sort of finalize their review. And again, when you're actually looking at when you're going to get vaccine, that's a bit separate from the regulatory review process. So, it's one step. It's really important. We need Health Canada review. We need to make sure that these vaccines are meeting the standards for safety and efficacy and quality. And then when it actually comes to when Canadians are getting vaccines, it's really dependent on when we get the supply. And I think people are providing some dates, but it really depends on the vaccine scale up. So these are very complicated vaccines to make, and it's a very tricky part of the process where you go from making very small batches to when you're starting to make large scale millions of doses. And that's what's happening now. So that scale up is happening. So I think people are estimating dates, but I don't think anyone really knows exactly the dates that they're going to be getting the vaccines in any country.
So 2 separate issues, right? When are you going to receive it? When are you going to have approval? What is the best case scenario for Health Canada approving a vaccine, which it sounds like would be Pfizer's our best case?
Right. So best case scenario, if we get we're waiting for some additional data that's supposed to be coming in very soon. And if all the review goes smoothly and there are no hiccups, we're looking at around middle of December for a Health Canada final decision.
Okay. And then what kind of information? I appreciate what you're saying about the complexity. I heard you talking about it in the briefing earlier today. But have we been given a ballpark amount of time that it could take from approval to actually getting the vaccines themselves, like landing on the tarmac or however it is they're going to get into this country?
Yeah, so it's either ports or tarmacs, and that'll be likely we'll see first vaccine coming into Canada sometime in January.
Okay, so weeks from approval to actual arrival.
Yes.
Okay, I want to ask you about a couple of things related to that. Something that Dr. Alan Bernstein, who we spoke to in the last hour, said. He said he would like to hear more transparency from the various levels of government in terms of how is this going to get used? Is the plan in place to get the vaccines where they need to go to get them into people's arms? Because he worries that if we do not have a clear, articulated, outlined plan, that when companies have to make decisions about where to offload some of the limited amount of vaccine, that they might go, well, if Canada doesn't seem to have all its ducks in a row, we'll send this limited amount to another country first. Is that a legitimate concern at this point?
I mean, I think there are legitimate concerns around where supply is going and when, and making sure that we're ready to receive it. So I totally can understand people's needs and desires to have that concrete information about what that vaccine rollout plan would be like, and that's why we're starting. So today we started with a briefing. We had officials out today really focusing on the regulatory piece of it, but also on the procurement side. We're going to be coming back shortly with another briefing, really focused on those logistics. And just to say that it's been months now when we've been working with the provinces and territories to sort exactly that out, the rollout plan. And it is complicated. And, we're looking at a mass vaccination program like we've never seen before. But I want to reassure people that a lot of progress is being made. I think we're putting the final touches on what that plan is going to look like, and the rollout. We're hearing from provinces and territories about where their capacity lies, where there may be gaps, how their populations fit into the priority groups that will be getting the vaccine first. And we'll be coming out very shortly with, the full plan. And I think it's really important that we do have, openness and transparency and show that full national plan to Canadians.
We were speaking with some medical experts, myself and my team, as we were preparing for this interview. And one thing that one doctor raised with us was the question of where the vaccines are manufactured. We know some of the big players that appear to be involved are countries that we're familiar with, the US, UK. But is that a concern that if some other nations that perhaps we do business with less frequently, if an India, for instance, is manufacturing the vaccine, what sorts of, and I don't particularly want to pick on India, but as you look at this, ensuring that we're comfortable with the manufacturing standards and not just the scientific standards of the vaccines themselves?
No, absolutely. So when we look at the reviews, when we look at the scientific reviews, there really are sort of three sections to that. So one is the early lab data, the animal studies. Then we've got obviously all the clinical trial information of the tens of thousands of people that have received the vaccine. We have a lot of information on how it's manufactured, but we also get information on the sites. So where the vaccines are going to be manufactured, whether they've met international standards for good manufacturing practices, whether they have quality assurance measures in place, and that's regardless of where they're manufactured. And the reality of it is that it's not unusual that whether it's drugs or vaccines, that the products that we get in Canada are manufactured outside of Canada.
Where would, for instance, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, given that those are the most promising, where would we likely be getting them from specifically?
So it depends. So for Pfizer's obviously a larger company. They have assets in terms of vaccine manufacture that could be shifted to make the mRNA vaccines. They have a site in Europe, in Belgium, and then they have sites in the United States. In those ones in the United States, again, it may not be that one site is going to make the entire vaccine from start to finish, but it's common to have drug product coming from one place, then it gets shipped to another place for the fill, it gets shipped to another place for vaccine labeling and things like that as well. So there's 3 sites that are geared up in the States for Pfizer and 1 in Europe. And Moderna has also contracted, because they're a smaller company and they didn't have that manufacturing capacity, they've contracted with another company that does have that manufacturing capacity. And again, they have a site in Switzerland and as well a site in the United States. But it was always going to be this way. There were going to be limited sites for these brand new technologies and these brand new vaccines. And those would basically serve the entire world.
One thing I do want to ask you about that hasn't been discussed at great length is children in all of this, right? Because the initial data that you're receiving from Pfizer and Moderna, to the best of my understanding, they have not completed trials on younger kids. So I just wonder what you can say to Canadians broadly about where their expectations should be around what's going to happen with children in the COVID vaccine.
Right. So the Pfizer trials, some of them they do have, so they go down to the age of 12. So there are some clinical trial participants that are on the younger side. But again, this is not unusual. When new vaccines come out, they tend to be tested in adults. Children are considered to be a vulnerable population. And then what happens is once those trials are completed, and we have information on the vaccine, then they will go back and they'll do the earlier trials again. So the phase 1 and the phase 2 studies in other populations, including children, and then use something called bridging assessment. So they don't have to do the big phase 3 trials in children, but do that sort of assessment to show that not only, from the first trials, they're safe in kids, but also that they will actually produce that immune response as well. So children won't be the first ones to get vaccinated. It will really be focusing on adults. But then we're expecting the companies to then move to doing extended trials for children.
I have 1,000 more questions, but we're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you very much for your insights, Dr. Supriya Sharma, Chief Medical Advisor at Health Canada.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.